The silver research vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, its hull gleaming in the morning sunlight. Dr. Zixis stood at the observation window, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the landscape below. 3 centuries had passed since the supposed extinction of humanity, and now his team would be the first to properly document their primitive civilization. The ship landed softly in a clearing surrounded by crumbling structures and trees growing through broken pavement. This place had once been called Chicago, according to their historical records. Vines and wild plants had claimed most of the buildings, turning the human city into a forest of concrete and steel. Prepare the survey equipment. Dr. Zixis ordered his team of 12 researchers. And remember, we're here to document their primitive attempts at civilization, not waste time on meaningless artifacts. Fexna, the youngest member of the team, nodded along with the others but couldn't hide her excitement. While her colleagues saw only ruins, she sensed something different about this place. Her scanner picked up odd energy readings, but she kept quiet about them. Dr. Zixis didn't like when junior researchers questioned his assumptions. The team set up their base camp in a flat area that still showed traces of pathways and decorative plants. Their protective bubbles rose around the equipment, keeping the Earth's air out. Dr. Zixis insisted they take these precautions, even though their tests showed the atmosphere was safe to breathe. "Look at these structures," Dr. Zixis said, pointing at the tall buildings around them. Simple steel and glass, barely more advanced than children's building blocks. Nothing like our crystal towers back home. He typed notes into his datapad, already drafting his report about the primitive nature of human architecture. But as Vexna studied the ruins, she noticed strange patterns in the decay. Some buildings seemed to have fallen exactly where they needed to, creating hidden spaces beneath them. The plant growth, too, appeared almost too perfect in places, as if it had been guided rather than random. Later that afternoon, they found their first major artifact, a partially preserved ground vehicle. Dr. Zixis laughed at its crude design, pointing out the primitive combustion engine and basic metal frame. See, they never even developed basic gravity control. They spent their entire existence bound to the ground like animals. Fexna walked around the vehicle, running her scanner over its surface. The energy readings spiked again, but in a pattern that suggested purpose rather than random decay. She opened her mouth to mention it, then stopped. Dr. Zixis was already recording his conclusions about humanity's limited technological understanding. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the ruins, the team gathered to review their first day's findings. Dr. Zixis seemed pleased with himself, certain that his pre-expedition theories about humanity's primitive nature had been proven correct. None of them noticed the small camera drone watching them from inside a broken window, or the fact that their communications were being monitored by systems far more advanced than anything they possessed. Deep below the surface, in a hidden command center, Eric Russell watched the aliens with great interest. He smiled as he recorded their dismissive comments about human technology, knowing just how wrong they were. The underground city hummed with power as Susan Martinez reviewed Eric's footage. "Let them think what they want for now," she said to the others gathered around the holographic display. "They'll learn soon enough." The vast chamber around them pulsed with subtle light, filled with technology that would make their alien visitors question everything they thought they knew about humanity. Back on the surface, as darkness fell, Vexna took one last scan of the area. For just a moment, her instruments detected a massive power signature deep underground, but it vanished so quickly she convinced herself it must have been an error. She looked up at the stars becoming visible in the evening sky, unaware that she was standing on top of humanity's greatest achievements, hidden safely beneath her feet. The second day of the alien expedition began with a series of disappointed sighs. Dr. Zixis walked through the ruins, shaking his head at every new discovery. His team spread out across several blocks of the old city, scanning and documenting what they found with their advanced equipment. "Another primitive cooling system," Dr. Zixis announced, pointing at an old air conditioning unit. They couldn't even control their local weather. He moved on quickly, already bored with what he saw as simple machinery. Hidden in the shadows of a collapsed building, Eric Russell watched the aliens with careful eyes. He wore clothing that matched the surrounding ruins, making him nearly invisible to their scanners. His own advanced scanning equipment, disguised as pieces of broken concrete, told him everything about the alien team's movements. Eric touched the nearly invisible communicator in his ear. "They're moving east now, Susan, heading toward the old financial district." His whisper traveled through quantum channels that the aliens' equipment couldn't detect. Deep underground, Susan Martinez stood in the control room of the hidden city. Massive screens showed her every angle of the alien expedition. "Keep watching them, Eric. We need to know exactly how they react to what they find." The alien team discovered a partially preserved office building. They moved through it floor by floor, scanning everything they found. Vexna noticed something odd about the building's support structure, but Dr. Zixis dismissed her concerns. "Look at these crude computers," one of the alien researchers said, pointing at old desktop machines. They were still using silicon processors, barely more advanced than calculators. The team laughed, taking pictures of what they thought was the height of human technology. Eric smiled from his hiding spot. If they only knew about the quantum processors hidden just a few levels below them, processors that made their alien technology look like children's toys. He watched as Vexna separated from the group, her curiosity leading her to examine things the others ignored. In the underground city, thousands of humans went about their daily lives. The hidden metropolis stretched for miles in every direction, filled with technology that had advanced far beyond what the surface world had shown. Susan Martinez walked through the crowded streets, passing by holographic displays and gravity-defying transport pods. "How long should we let them believe their own stories?" asked Katie Patterson, the chief engineer. She stood next to Susan, watching the alien team through their surveillance feeds. "They're starting to damage some of the surface equipment with their testing." "Just a little longer," Susan replied. "We need to understand their intentions fully before we reveal ourselves." She watched as Dr. Zixis arrogantly lectured his team about the primitive concrete used in the buildings. Above ground, Vexna found herself drawn to an old subway entrance. The alien scans showed nothing but collapsed tunnels below, but something about the readings bothered her. The energy signatures she detected seemed to fade away too perfectly, as if they were being hidden on purpose. "Vexna, stop wasting time in that hole," Dr. Zixis called out. "It's just another example of their limited underground transportation system. Nothing interesting down there." Eric watched Vexna reluctantly leave the subway entrance. He could tell she was different from the others, more willing to question what she saw. Maybe she would be the first to understand when the truth was finally revealed. The day continued with more discoveries that the alien team dismissed as primitive. They found old solar panels and declared them inefficient. They discovered wind turbines and laughed at their simple design. With each dismissive comment, Eric recorded their reactions and sent them back to Susan. As evening approached, the alien team gathered to catalog their findings. Dr. Zixis was already drafting his report about humanity's limited technological advancement. None of them noticed the slight humming from deep below, or the brief flicker of lights in windows that should have been dark for centuries. In the underground city, Susan Martinez called a meeting of the council. The time was coming when they would need to decide how to reveal themselves. On the screens around them, the alien team continued their work, completely unaware that they were the ones being studied. On the third day of their expedition, the alien research team found something that changed everything. While scanning what appeared to be an ordinary street, their equipment detected a large underground space. Dr. Zixis ordered his team to clear away the debris blocking an old subway entrance. "Another primitive transportation system," Dr. Zixis said, his voice echoing in the dark tunnel. They dug holes in the ground like burrowing animals. He activated his light sphere, which floated ahead of the group as they descended the crumbling stairs. Deep below, in the hidden city's control room, Katie Patterson watched the aliens approach one of their outer defense systems. They're getting closer to the sensor grid. Susan, she said, her fingers moving across the holographic controls. Should we activate the warning system? Susan Martinez studied the video feeds carefully. Yes, she decided. Let's give them a little taste of what they're dealing with. Nothing too obvious, just enough to make them question their assumptions. The alien team reached the bottom of the stairs. Their scanners began picking up strange energy readings that made no sense to them. Dr. Zixis frowned at his equipment, tapping it with one of his 4 fingers. These readings must be wrong, he said. The energy patterns are too complex for human technology. He adjusted his scanner settings, convinced there was a malfunction. Vexna moved away from the group, drawn to a section of wall that looked different from the rest. Her scanner showed power flowing through what appeared to be solid concrete. She reached out to touch the surface, and for a brief moment felt it vibrate under her hand. Eric Russell watched from a hidden observation post, using technology that made him completely invisible to the alien sensors. He spoke quietly into his communicator. Katie, they're about to reach the first marker. Vexna is already suspicious. Katie smiled and activated a sequence of commands. Throughout the tunnel, ancient lights flickered to life for just a second before going dark again. The alien team froze in place, staring at the ceiling in confusion. A power surge from old systems, Dr. Zixis declared, but his voice wavered slightly. Nothing more than dying batteries finally releasing their charge. Vexna wasn't convinced. But doctor, these energy patterns are organized. They follow a clear sequence. This isn't random decay. She showed him her scanner's display, which revealed complex energy waves moving through the walls. Before Dr. Zixis could dismiss her concerns, a low hum filled the tunnel. The aliens' equipment began displaying readings that, according to their understanding of human technology, should have been impossible. In the control room, Katie accessed more systems. Old maintenance robots in the tunnel walls powered up just enough to be detected before shutting down again. Holographic warning signs flickered in and out of existence, displaying text in languages that hadn't been seen on Earth's surface for centuries. Fascinating, Vexna whispered, recording everything she saw. These patterns suggest an active power source, not a dead one. And look at these markings on the wall. They're not random damage. They're access panels. Dr. Zixis struggled to maintain his composure. Nonsense, he said, but his usual confidence was shaking. This is. For the first time since landing on Earth, he couldn't explain what he was seeing. The team pressed deeper into the tunnel system, unaware that every step was being monitored by systems far beyond their comprehension. Eric followed them silently, reporting their reactions back to Susan and Katie. They're starting to realize something isn't right, Katie said, watching the aliens' growing confusion. Should we show them more? Susan nodded slowly. A little more. Let's wake up the old defense grid, just enough to make them understand they're not dealing with primitive technology anymore. As if responding to her words, the tunnel around the alien team came alive with subtle signs of power. Tiny lights began pulsing in patterns too regular to be accidental. Strange symbols appeared and disappeared on the walls. And somewhere in the distance, machinery that should have died centuries ago hummed with life. Daniel Wright sat in his control room deep underground, his fingers dancing across floating screens of light. As the hidden city's eye specialist, he had waited years for this moment. All systems are ready for full reactivation, Susan, he said, watching the alien team through dozens of hidden cameras. Above ground, the aliens had no idea they were about to witness something impossible. Dr. Zixis stood in what was left of an old shopping center, still trying to explain away the strange readings from the subway tunnel. It must have been old batteries releasing their final charge, he said again, but no one seemed convinced anymore. Vexna pointed her scanner at a blank wall. Doctor, the energy readings are getting stronger. They're everywhere now, and they're growing. Her device showed power flowing through every building around them, but that should have been impossible in ruins this old. Daniel smiled as he activated the first sequence. Starting with basic systems, He announced to the underground control room. "Let's wake up the old girl slowly." The ground beneath the alien team's feet began to vibrate softly. At first, it was so gentle, they thought they were imagining it. Then the vibrations grew stronger, following a clear pattern that couldn't be natural. "What's happening?" one of the alien researchers asked, all four of her eyes wide with fear. Before anyone could answer, the first lights began to flicker on in the buildings around them. In the hidden city, Katie Patterson monitored the power grid. "All systems are responding perfectly," she reported. "The aliens' base camp is right above the main hub. They're about to get quite a show." Windows that had been dark for centuries suddenly glowed with soft blue light. Old advertising screens that the aliens had dismissed as primitive technology hummed to life, displaying crystal-clear holograms that floated in the air. Dr. Zixes stumbled backward, watching in shock as the ruins around him transformed. "This isn't possible," he whispered. Their technology was primitive. We saw the proof. Vexna's scanner was going crazy, showing power levels that matched or exceeded anything their own civilization had achieved. "Doctor, I don't think we saw proof of anything. I think we saw what they wanted us to see." Deep underground, Daniel activated the next phase. The ground shifted as hidden panels opened, revealing gleaming robots that rose from their long sleep. The machines began cleaning and repairing the streets and buildings around the stunned alien team. "Their maintenance systems are more advanced than our best construction units," one of the alien researchers said, recording everything with shaking hands. The robots moved with perfect grace, their bodies flowing like liquid metal as they worked. Susan Martinez watched all of this from the control room, surrounded by her team. "Daniel, start bringing the quantum computing network online. Let's show them what human technology can really do." The air itself seemed to come alive as thousands of tiny lights appeared, forming a vast network of glowing points. The aliens watched in awe as these lights connected into complex patterns, creating a visible web of quantum connections right before their eyes. Dr. Zixes' data pad fell from his hands as he watched buildings repair themselves, powered by technology he couldn't even understand. Everything he had written about humanity's primitive nature, every dismissive comment and arrogant conclusion, was being proven wrong in the most dramatic way possible. In the hidden city, Eric Russell finally stepped out of his hiding place. He had changed into his regular clothes, which seemed to shift and flow with their own inner light. "I think it's time we properly introduced ourselves," he said into his communicator. Daniel nodded, activating the final sequence. The ground in front of the alien team began to split open, revealing a smooth, glowing elevator platform. It rose from below, carrying Susan Martinez and Katie Patterson, both wearing the advanced clothing of the underground city. The aliens could only stare as they realized that everything they thought they knew about humanity had been completely, utterly wrong. The alien research team stood frozen as Susan Martinez and Katie Patterson stepped off the glowing elevator platform. The two women wore clothing that seemed to shift colors with each movement, made from technology far beyond anything the aliens possessed. "Welcome to Earth," Susan said, her voice calm and confident. "I believe you've made some incorrect assumptions about our civilization." She gestured at the transformed landscape around them, where advanced robots continued their work of cleaning and repairing the surface structures. Dr. Zixes opened and closed his mouth several times before finding his voice. But the ruins, all our scans showed primitive technology. How is this possible?" His four eyes blinked rapidly as he tried to process what he was seeing. Katie smiled and pulled up a holographic display from what had looked like a simple bracelet on her wrist. "Your scans showed exactly what we wanted them to show. The surface ruins are a cover, nothing more." The display showed the vast underground city beneath their feet, layer upon layer of advanced technology stretching for miles in every direction. More elevator platforms emerged from the ground, bringing other humans to the surface. Each wore similarly advanced clothing and carried devices that made the aliens' equipment look like children's toys. Eric Russell appeared among them, now dressed in the same technological garments as the others. "I've been watching your team since you landed," Eric explained to the shocked aliens. "We needed to understand your intentions before deciding how to reveal ourselves." He nodded to Vexna, though some of you were more observant than others. Deep below, Daniel Wright continued activating more systems. The buildings around them hummed with power as hidden quantum processors came online. Holographic screens appeared in the air, showing news, data, and information in dozens of languages, including several the aliens had never seen before. "Impossible," one of the alien researchers whispered, watching as a nearby wall transformed into a transparent display, revealing the complex machinery hidden inside. "Your species was supposed to be extinct. The Great Catastrophe. We chose to go underground," Susan explained. "The surface catastrophe was real, but we were ready for it. We built this." She waved her hand, and the air filled with a three-dimensional map of the underground city. While the surface recovered, we continued to advance. Katie walked over to Dr. Zix's fallen datapad and picked it up. With a simple gesture, she accessed its contents and projected them into the air. "Your assessment of our technology was quite interesting to read," she said, scrolling through his dismissive comments about human civilization. Vexna stepped forward, her eyes bright with excitement rather than fear. "The energy readings in the subway. They weren't malfunctions at all, were they? They were your systems, hidden beneath the surface." More humans emerged from various hidden entrances, going about their daily work as if advanced robots and quantum computers were perfectly normal. They paid little attention to the shocked aliens, focused instead on maintaining the now active surface infrastructure. "Would you like to see what human civilization really looks like?" Susan asked, gesturing to the open elevator platform. "We have much to show you." The platform's surface rippled like liquid metal, adjusting its size to accommodate both humans and aliens. Dr. Zixis looked at his team, then back at the humans and their impossible technology. His entire understanding of Earth's history and human capabilities had been completely wrong. Everything he thought he knew about their civilization had just been proven false in the most dramatic way possible. In the hidden city below, Daniel Wright prepared the main reception area for their first official alien visitors. Quantum computers processed data at speeds that would make the aliens' best systems seem slow. Artificial gravity systems, clean fusion power plants, and technology that existed at the edge of theoretical physics, all of it had been hidden beneath a carefully maintained facade of primitive ruins. The elevator platform descended smoothly into the Earth, carrying both humans and aliens through layers of advanced technology. Dr. Zixis and his team pressed against the transparent walls, watching in amazement as they passed floor after floor of the hidden city. "Our city extends for hundreds of miles in every direction," Susan explained, gesturing at the vast spaces around them. "We have a population of roughly 10 million in this hub alone." The platform passed by residential areas where children played in artificial parks under light that perfectly matched natural sunlight. Vexna could barely keep up with her scanning and recording. "Your power systems, they're not just advanced, they're beyond anything we've achieved." She pointed to a glowing core in the distance. "Is that clean fusion?" Katie nodded. "One of our smaller reactors. We cracked efficient fusion technology about 50 years before the surface catastrophe." She brought up a holographic display showing the city's power grid. "We have dozens of these reactors providing power to our network." The platform stopped at a large reception area where more humans waited to greet them. The room's walls shifted and changed color, adjusting to create the most comfortable environment for both species. Dr. Zixis realized with shock that the humans had already perfectly analyzed his species' preferred lighting and atmospheric conditions. Eric stepped forward to make formal introductions. "As you've already met Susan Martinez, our city's leader, and Katie Patterson, our chief engineer. This is Daniel Wright, our AI systems specialist." Daniel nodded, his neural interface visible as a subtle pattern of light under his skin. "But why?" Dr. Zixis finally asked. Why hide all of this? Why let the galaxy think you were primitive and extinct? His hand shook as he gestured at the incredible technology surrounding them. Susan walked to a large window overlooking a vast indoor farm where robots tended to crops growing in spiraling towers. We needed time, she explained. The surface catastrophe taught us valuable lessons about rushing into technological advancement without understanding the consequences. We chose to step back, Daniel added, his neural interface flickering as he accessed historical records. We built this place not just to survive, but to advance at our own pace without external pressure or interference. The alien team watched in amazement as a group of children ran past, playing with what looked like pet robots that moved with incredible grace. Above them, transport pods zipped along invisible tracks, carrying people through the vast underground space. We've been observing the galaxy's development, Katie said, pulling up more holographic displays. We wanted to be sure we were ready before revealing ourselves. Your expedition gave us that opportunity. Vexna walked to one of the windows, pressing her hand against its surface. The material responded to her touch, displaying information about everything she looked at. You could have dominated the galaxy with this technology, she said quietly. That's exactly why we didn't reveal it, Susan replied. Power isn't about domination. It's about responsibility. We needed to be sure we would use our advancement wisely. She gestured to a large conference room where other human leaders waited. Now, we're ready to share what we've learned. Dr. Zixis looked at his team, then back at the humans. Everything about their mission had changed. They had come to study ruins, but instead found themselves face to face with a civilization far more advanced than their own. We would be honored to learn from you, he said, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine humility. The humans smiled, and Susan led the way into the conference room, where the real first contact between their civilizations would begin. Daniel activated the room's systems, and the walls came alive with displays showing the true history of human technological development. The aliens sat down, ready to learn how very wrong they had been about humanity's capabilities. 1 week after the revelation, the underground city buzzed with activity. Alien researchers worked alongside human scientists, learning from each other in ways neither side had expected. Dr. Zixis sat in his new office, completely rewriting his report to the Centaurian Science Academy. How do I explain that everything we thought we knew about Earth was wrong? He asked Vexna, who was studying the human quantum computer. The young researcher had adapted to the situation better than anyone else on the team. Tell them the truth, she replied, watching as the computer processed calculations that would take their best systems years to complete. Tell them we learned the greatest scientific lesson possible. Never assume primitive means simple. In the main control room, Katie Patterson showed another group of alien scientists how human AI systems worked. We developed a different path to artificial intelligence, she explained, bringing up displays showing neural networks that looked nothing like alien designs. We chose to grow our AI naturally, letting it develop alongside us like a child. Daniel Wright worked nearby, his neural interface glowing as he demonstrated how humans and AI had learned to work together. The aliens watched in amazement as he controlled complex systems with just his thoughts, the AI responding to him like a trusted friend. Your entire society is built on cooperation, one of the alien scientists said, finally understanding what they were seeing. Not just between humans, but between organic and artificial life. She looked around at the city where robots and humans worked together seamlessly. Susan Martinez met with the alien leadership in a conference room high above the city floor. Through the transparent walls, they could see the vast underground metropolis stretching into the distance. We're ready to join the galactic community, she told them, but on our terms, as equals. The alien leaders nodded, knowing they had no choice. Human technology had advanced far beyond their own during the centuries of isolation. But more importantly, humans had developed wisdom along with their power. Eric Russell led a tour through the city's historical archives, showing the aliens how humanity had learned from the surface catastrophe. "We didn't just survive," he explained. "We used it as a chance to rebuild ourselves, to create something better." In the residential areas, alien families who had arrived to support the research team found themselves welcomed by human neighbors. Children from both species played together in parks where artificial sunlight felt as warm and natural as the real thing. Dr. Zixis finished his report with a new section titled "The Deceptive Nature of Ruins," a lesson in scientific humility. He wrote about how humanity had chosen to hide their advancement, not out of fear or weakness, but out of wisdom and patience. They waited until they were ready, he wrote, not just technologically, but culturally. They built a civilization based on balance, between progress and wisdom, between organic and artificial, between power and responsibility. Deep in the quantum computing core, Vex now worked with Katie on establishing new communication channels between Earth and the alien homeworld. The quantum networks humans had built could transmit data instantly across any distance, making old space communication systems obsolete. Susan stood in her office, looking out over the city she helped lead. The arrival of the aliens had changed things, but not in the ways anyone had expected. Instead of fear or conflict, there was curiosity and learning on both sides. "We're ready for this," Daniel said, joining her at the window. Below them, human and alien scientists walked together, sharing ideas and planning future projects. "We took the time we needed, and now we can help guide the galaxy towards something better." In the surface ruins above, the old buildings still stood, but they no longer needed to hide what lay beneath. As the sun set on another day, lights began to glow in windows that had been dark for centuries. Earth was ready to shine again, not just as a survivor, but as a teacher for all those who had underestimated humanity's potential.